So let's look into another exact search algorithm, which is KMP, Nuth, Morris, and Pratt, named on those scientists. So it's a linear time algorithm for string matching, and it does not involve backtracking on S. So there is no repetitive comparison. So as we look back, we see that there was some mismatches, and since pattern was shifted one position towards the right in case of the brute force approach, so there were too many comparisons. So there are some of the comparisons which we can avoid. So if we know that nucleotide in the text, for example, at position number 7 mismatches the nucleotide of this pattern on position number 2, we will keep track of it, and we will try not to do this match again. So in this way, we can avoid this, what we call it as backtracking. There are two components of KMP or this algorithm. One is prefix function and the other one is KMP matcher. So there are two basically algorithms which are part of this. The prefix function encapsulates knowledge about how the pattern matches against shifts of itself. So first of all, we will take the nucleotides within the patterns. Guys, this I'm using the word nucleotides, but don't be confused with it. So it can be any pattern. It can be the word searches. Actually, when these algorithms they were written, they were not aiming at this DNA nucleotides or amino acids. They were actually for any kind of text searches. So it can be text coming from those binary strings, ones are zeros, or what you do in Microsoft Word or PowerPoint. So those all word matches, even the any language alphabets, they can be matched. So prefix function encapsulates the knowledge about how the pattern matches against shifts of itself, and this information can be used to avoid this useless shifts of pattern P. So in this way, we are actually avoiding the backtracking. Here is the KMP matcher. So given the string S, pattern P, and prefix function, so we will compute the prefix function first before we start this KMP matcher. And then now we have three things to start with. One is string S, one is pattern P, and from these two we have calculated the prefix function which we are using here. What we are interested in finding the occurrence of P in S, and this matcher returns the number of shifts of P after which the occurrence is found, or we can with those many shifts we can calculate where the exact location of the pattern is within the text. So here is the algorithm for first part, which is actually the compute prefix function. So M is the length of P, and then we come up with this prefix function pi 1. So we start with something which we call it as prefix or pi, and on its first index we send 0. So we initialize that actually. We take another variable k and we store 0 in it. We will use that later on. Then we come up with a for loop that is q 2 to m. So actually we take that pattern and we start its second position actually. So that q is keeping track of that. So we start with the second, with third and fourth. So that's why we're using this for loop up till the length of the p which is stored in m. Then within that for loop we put a do while loop, and we will check this condition if our k is greater than 0. Initially when we start, our k is 0, so we don't go here, but later on we will update that k. If k is 0 and p of k plus 1 not equal to p of q, so within the pattern p of k plus 1 means, so if we are at the first place, so we are taking the first position of the pattern, that is equal to p of q. So we are comparing first with the second position within the pattern over here. If it is not equal to, remember guys, here is our pattern and here is position number 1, and then we have position number 2. Suppose here we have A and here we have T. So we are actually comparing these two guys. If they are unequal, what we do, we will update the k with pi of k. So at that particular pi, so pi 1 we have 0, So if they mismatch, in this condition, we will send that 0 into k. So k will stay as 0. If it is equal to that, if p of k plus 1 is equal to p of q, then we will update the k to 1. So k is actually keeping track of how many matches we have found. If both of them, these conditions are not true, we will send that pi of k into pi of k. The value of k will be stored in pi of q. So in case of a match, we will update the value of k, and then our k will be k plus 1, and we will take that value of k and store it in pi of q. And in the end, we return the pi. So in this way, in prefix function, we will get this prefix function. The return is this pi, which is the prefix. So in case of the matcher, we have computed already this prefix function, and we start with n, which stores the length of s, that is the string. M stores the length of p, and we take a variable q that stores the number of characters matched. And then we incorporate a for loop from 1 through n. So that scans through the string, the search space from left to right. We add a do while loop, and same way as we did in the prefix function, we will check for the values of q if they are greater than 0, and at the same time we found a mismatch. So in that case, in q we will put the prefix value which we actually computed earlier. So at that particular q, what is the function of this pi at that point? So we will substitute that value with q. If these two characters they match, q plus 1 and s of I, then we update q by 1. So in this way, in the q, we can keep track of the number of match characters, and in case they mismatch, then it gets initialized again into 0. So if the q reaches m, where we found that we have matched all the patterns, all the characters within the patterns, so then we print the pattern's position. So that can be calculated as I minus m plus 1. And in the q, we put the pi of q, and then in that case, as I said earlier, that this q gets initialized, and we start looking it again, start moving the pattern again, and start looking for the next match. So you will understand once we run it. So let's look into the next sections, guys. So in this section, we have taken just a general idea about how KMP works. So there are two sub-algorithms. One is where we found a prefix function that helps us avoiding backtracking and saves our time. So basically, because of that, it is a linear time algorithm, and it avoids useless shifts of pattern P.